Mr. Goel, thank you so much, first of all, for coming here, giving us a view of what the government, what the Ministry of Heavy Industries has been doing when it comes to smart manufacturing. And I guess this is really the core of the production-linked incentive scheme, 1.97 lakh crore. That is the complete outlay of all the PLI schemes. The automotive sector, big beneficiary of that. You've also made an outlay for the drone sector as well. And if we look at the first line of the PLI draft, it says advanced automotive technology. So this is something that is working for the future. And in fact, the automotive PLI scheme was one which was processed in the shortest period of time. Let me begin by asking you, there have been 13 or 14 sectors which the government has already focused on. For the future, looking at the global supply disruptions, which are some of the sectors which you feel the industry can look at very closely to have greater competitiveness in future, and industries which the government, which the Ministry of Heavy Industries is looking at closely for further incentives?
See, you see, this government is, extremely dynamic and responsive government. So as the first lot has come in, obviously the expectations are for more. This is a human nature. So government is in constant touch with all the stakeholders. So the PLI can't be given to anyone and everyone, let's be very frank about it. So PLI should be given where industry, that particular industry has reached a particular stage. It has a specific requirement which requires that particular input. So the problem needs to be diagnosed and there needs to be a precise treatment for it. Like why we go to the super specialty hospitals is more for diagnosis, because once the diagnosis is known, treatment can be seen on Google.
Right.
So the mere asking doesn't complete the industry's plea. They need to put the whole thing in a very logistic and a comprehensive manner. And the government is open. As you can see, thereafter, after the first lot, many of the ministries are coming out with other ministries. So even we in our ministry are in touch with other industries we are dealing with, like capital goods, heavy electrical, we are in touch with them. And they are giving us various ideas. So those ideas are being brainstormed. And once we reach a particular point, then we shall come out with a specific PLI.
Right. I'll speak a little more about the automotive sector because you deal with it directly. You've held so many stakeholder consultations over the 2 years, the FAME scheme, the automotive PLI scheme, the component PLI scheme, the advanced chemistry cell PLI scheme, all are being monitored by the Heavy Industries Ministry. Through your stakeholder consultations, which are the points where you feel the industry is lacking when it comes to smart manufacturing? The government has done its bit with the incentives, and as you said, the incentives cannot be for everyone. But which are the areas where the industry now has to stand up?
You see, within the industry, there are various players. So each player has its own strengths and weaknesses. Like in a family, all kids are not the same. So while we have within the auto such industries who have taken the jump even before and they are going to encash, there are others who are looking at them and now coming forth. So I think it's a process in the society, in every society. So slowly and slowly as a movement becomes. Now, you know, when you had the first interaction with me on the PLI auto, there were a lot of apprehensions. Nobody thought even the target we had set for ourselves would be achieved. But in reality, in the shortest time, again, your words, we have not only achieved, but gone beyond that by more than 1.5 times. And that's where I think the stakeholder consultation is important. Because the moment that day scheme was announced, we had interaction with the industry. They said many things. So, first of all, the direct interaction allayed their apprehensions. Those interactions gave them the confidence. And see, when we frame something from the government side, we can't foresee how the taker is going to read it. So we have to take their perspective. Now, the people who are sitting here, they interpreted the same thing in a particular way. But immediately we said, we'll do it this way, and we did it. So the confidence which the industry got in the government, that's what led them to come forward and invest in a big way. I think that has been the path of auto industry.
I think you try to make sure that no one comes forward and said that they were not consulted or they did not know that this was coming. I would also like to ask you, one common phrase that we hear in every economic forum is that India's time is now. Countries want to diversify. They want to have a China plus one strategy. And India must rise up to the occasion. Looking at the global disruptions, what would be your advice to the industry to have greater cost and operational efficiencies going forward?
No, Parikshit, as I said, everybody knows though, but as I said in my address also, the path of future is not the same what we did in last 4 decades. It's a different path now. We have to go to a different trajectory, which is a high growth trajectory. So first of that is engineering R&D. We are at 0.8%, where our competitors are at 2%. No, many of our industries are doing more than 3%, more than 4%. But as an industry, we are not doing. Some of the units are doing. So that is the core. Then we need to have the complete chain of questions being answered, which government is doing now. So if there's a question of steel, that is being taken care of. If it's a question of logistics, that's being taken care of. So the government has a comprehensive approach. And then we have to see the manpower, as I said, level 6 and above. That's a bigger challenge. Now, all of us know that behind most of the patents across the world, Indians have a great role to play. But how many patents belong to Indian companies? So patents are being created by Indians, but not for India or Indian companies. We are a big nation. If we have to be advanced economy, if we have to reach the 4 trillion turnover in auto, it can't be the business as usual. All of them know it. And now is the time, that's why we brought in this PLI, to change the track. Because otherwise, before the PLI, the larger section of auto industry was saying PLI should be to use the already created capacity, which we didn't go in for. We went in for advanced automotive technologies because we felt that Indian auto industry requires that catalyst. They are already the most capable. So utilizing the idle capacity is not the right approach. So we need to stretch ourselves more than what we did in the last 4 decades.
Right. Ease of doing business, this is something that has guided this government's policy making. Light touch when it comes to regulations. A lot of reforms have happened, a lot of reforms are underway as well. But there cannot be any shortcuts. The government is giving incentives, the government is making policy interventions, but how would you also ensure quality? For example, when it comes to electric vehicles, issues such as safety, how would you like to ensure that when the government is giving out these incentives?
You're absolutely right. First of all, let's look at the market. Anybody who is producing an unsafe product cannot last in the market. So today, the awareness of consumer is so high. So that is the first check. Now, where we come in, are we encouraging as a government, irrespective of quality? No. We are encouraging the products which are beyond a particular standard. Then, do we have the ecosystem? As I said, we have sanctioned about 100 crores to ARI Pune, which will be spent before next March, whereby the entire testing mechanism, ecosystem for cells, battery management system and battery packs shall be in place at par with world in India. We have already created through our net trip, when we have our centers, ICAT at Manesar, near Gurgaon, then Netrex at Indore and GRC at Chennai. Now these 3 centers today provide the best in the line testing facilities to Indian auto industry. So government is doing its role, industry is coming forward, that's how the quality is improving, and that's the way forward.
Right. I'll just open the floor to a few questions. Our distinguished guests have a few questions for you, Mr. Goel. Mr. Agarwal, if I can ask you? Could we give a mic to Mr. Agarwal?
First of all, I would like to compliment you for a very, very insightful address, and also compliment you as well as the Government of India for driving the industry towards smart manufacturing through PLI, as well as program on electromobility, where electric buses are now going to come in the market more and more. Now, my question is, how can we collaborate more and more with the government from industry to push these programs fast?
Vinodji, I think the answer is the continuous interaction. So we must know the problem you are facing. So as you tell us your problems, we'll try to look around for the answers. Many of the problems, like when Parikshit talked about ease of doing business, we know, we can imagine. That's what I talked about, the API. Nobody approached us for the API. We in the government thought, and we have created one. But yes, this is the beginning. It's not the end. If we have to reach 4 trillion turnover in 25 years' time for the Indian auto, we have to collaborate more and more. We need to facilitate the things for the industry more and more. I think the path for that is a continuous interaction. As you experience problems in achieving, we must answer those problems. I think that's the road ahead, as I see it.
Right. Scott Woolbridge.
Good morning, and thank you as well for your very insightful and passionate presentation and what India is doing to drive the industry sector. Rockwell is a global manufacturer, and we look at where we make our investments, and you highlighted a perception around a skills shortage in core manufacturing skills that may exist. What do you think India and the government needs to do to help bridge that gap so that the footprint of manufacturing can accelerate within India, and particularly the global investments?
See, the ecosystem we have no doubt improved a lot. But if we are aspiring to be, as I delineated in my address, we need to know the world's best practices in much greater detail. Not that we have to copy, but we need to learn and adapt, because wheel need not be reinvented, although the same wheel may not work as well in Germany as in India, because the road conditions are different. So like our ministry is in constant touch with many of such organizations. For example, the Fraunhofer, we have a detailed introduction. We have what they have achieved in about 100 years. So we try to learn from them. They have learned by the failures. Why should we repeat those failures? So that is the case study learning. Now we are involving, at my level, I'm having one-to-one talk. So we will not create a policy or a scheme which we know in similar shape has not succeeded elsewhere. So we need to tweak right in the very beginning, rather than trying something for 3 years, failing and then changing. So that's where these interactions, that's why on one side, as Mr. Agarwal said, the other side is you. So the constant interactions, open-minded interactions to have the best. So everybody needs to be open-minded. The industry also needs to open up. Business as usual is not the way. So I think that's the way I look at the collaboration, the skilling again. So we have the manpower. They are capable. So an Indian student, when he goes in Europe or US, he's able to deliver more than the local there. So it's not a problem of Indian student. It's a problem of the Indian system of skilling, Indian system of training. That's where we need to learn from those countries who have overcome this problem over the last decades. So that's where we need the collaboration, but by internalizing those to our circumstances. Thank you.
Right. We also have a view from the pharma sector. Mr. Roy?
Sir, your presentation was very, very insightful. It gave us a lot of learnings and insight. There is a lot of PLI schemes which has also come for the pharma sector. I wanted government's view, like the startup ecosystem for various industries will be crucial in this digital transformation and making this smart initiative, smart manufacturing happen. So is the government planning some programs for channelizing the startups for different industries to help in smart manufacturing?
See, startup is a domain of DPIIT, so it's not my domain strictly. But government, as you know, is encouraging the startups in a big way. But let's face the truth. It is an internal industrial issue. Startup for sector A or startup B or sector B is that startup finding the opportunity. Government is a facilitator. Government cannot be doer. So that's what has happened from the 1970s onwards in India, in our mindset. I belong to that generation, where we expect government to be doing everything. Now we know the people's energies are better put to optimal use when it's a private sector-led development, isn't it? So that people's energies are optimally channelized. So startup is one such thing. Startup for sector A or B, it is a guy who is doing the startup. He should be able to foresee that thing, and then he should be able to walk the talk. Why most of these startups don't succeed? Because they perceive something, but they are unable to lead it to the last point. Or the investors do not find it being strong enough on whom to bet, which would lead them make money. So it's not a government domain. So startups can be anywhere and everywhere, you know it. So there were some earlier startups, you say the scenario was easier, but then it's a continuous path. It's happening in all sectors. We couldn't see. Now, one point I like to say here, in India still the focus of most of the startups, I may be wrong, I'm just giving my information, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. Most of the startups are still focused on B2C. They are not on B2B. And that's the smart manufacturing. B2B startups must come up in India in a big way. That will help the smart manufacturing in a real sense. That's how I look at it, as across sectors.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much for laying out the government's vision when it comes to smart manufacturing, Mr. Goel, telling us about the importance of the PLI scheme and what the industry now needs to do after these interventions from the government. Thank you once again for joining us here on this discussion.